Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. Eclipses. A rare, though not uncommon, astronomical phenomenon that transpires when a celestial body is temporarily obscured as it passes through the shadow of another body, or is blocked by another body during its own transition. Most commonly, eclipses are in reference to solar eclipses, when the moon's shadow crosses over the Earth and darkens the sun, either partially or entirely, or lunar eclipses, when the moon passes through the shadow of the Earth and darkens the moon, likewise either partially or entirely. Though events such as this can be explained by modern science, and are often seen as natural wonders, in ancient times, when astronomy was still being developed, any and all events that happened in the skies and the heavens were an act of the gods or other immortal powers. And it was not always seen as a good thing. Back then, relatively primitive perspectives on eclipses could mean omens of good things to come, a warning of bad times in the future, or a meeting of powers beyond mortal comprehension. A recurring theme in mythical explanations for both solar and lunar eclipses is the concept of a gigantic creature swallowing the sun or the moon whole, before spitting it back out. In Norse mythology, the sun and moon were ever pursued by two celestial wolves named Skal and Hati. Should an eclipse occur, it was believed that one of the wolves had caught its quarry. But as eclipses would eventually pass, it was then believed that the wolves' prey had managed to escape. Only when the events of Ragnarok, the end of days, occurred, would Skal and Hati at last catch and consume the sun and moon permanently. In Philippine mythology, lunar eclipses were caused when a gigantic dragon called Bakunawa made attempts to swallow the moon, and would only be driven off by the combined efforts of stalwart gods and mortal people creating a loud racket to confuse and frighten off the great serpent. Rahu and Ketu of Hindu mythology, the Javanese god of darkness Batara Kala, celestial dragons in Chinese mythology, a giant frog in Vietnamese mythology, the Aztec jaguar god Tepeyolotl, a celestial puma in Andean mythology, a giant black squirrel in Choctaw mythology. The list goes on and on. Sometimes mythological explanations for the eclipses were due to attacks on celestial bodies or combat on the spiritual plane between two or more parties. In Egyptian mythology, eclipses were the result of forces of lawful order battling the forces of chaos, such as Horus's battle with his wicked uncle Set, or Ra's regular fights with the chaos serpent Apophis. The Badamaliba of northern Togo and Benin believed that human anger and fighting spread to the sun and the moon, who began to fight with each other and caused an eclipse, and the only way for an eclipse to cease was to put aside petty grievances and make amends on Earth. In Pomo mythology, it is said that a bear walked along the Milky Way until he came face to face with the sun. The two entities began to bicker and quarrel over who would move out of the other's way, until the proud bear was riled into attacking the sun. The fight between the sun and the bear is seen on Earth as a solar eclipse. But not all eclipse stories necessarily involved fighting or the devouring of a celestial body. Some are rather simple in comparison, such as the moon or sun being in distress. In Transylvanian folklore, a solar eclipse stems from an angered sun turning away and covering herself with darkness, as a response to men's bad behavior. A similar belief is held by the Tewa people of modern-day New Mexico, where a solar eclipse happens when the sun leaves the sky to go to his residence in the underworld, again, due to quarreling on Earth by mortal humans. Sometimes eclipses, both lunar and solar, are a sign that the gods are upset. The ancient Greeks believed that eclipses were the expression of displeasure from the Olympians, namely Zeus, who had ultimate power over the skies and all of the objects that dwelled within. The Inca believed that their supreme god Inti would show his wrath beginning with eclipses of the sun, prompting spiritual leaders to invoke sacred rites that may have included human sacrifice in order to appease his anger. Interestingly, many cultures explain solar and lunar eclipses as a result of a romantic or sexual union between the sun and the moon. Various Aboriginal Australian cultures claim the sun is a woman and the moon is a man, forever chasing one another, and occasionally uniting, as signaled by eclipses. Germanic mythology has a near identical telling, again with a female sun and a male moon, with eclipses being explained as a lover's union. In Tahitian mythology, the sun and moon again are lovers whose union causes the eclipse, but they get lost in the heat of the moment and create the stars in order to light their return to normalcy. Many Native American cultures also hold beliefs of eclipses being a union of two beings, though it is not always seen as romantic or sexual. For example, Inuit mythology claims the moon and sun are brother and sister respectively, racing and chasing each other, and occasionally meeting one another in the sky. As both lunar and solar eclipses have been seen nearly everywhere on the planet, and with eclipses being so infrequent but nevertheless a stunning marvel of nature, it is only natural that they are a subject of many myths in many cultures. Often they have been portrayed as frightening and unnerving, such as acting as a sign of immortal wrath or that a giant monstrous beast in the blackness of space is attacking a celestial body, and have even been portrayed as something romantic, like the union of two entities that are destined to remain separate. Many systems of spiritual belief and religion, both ancient and modern, hold times of lunar and solar eclipses as significant and even sacred times. Times of prayer, of fasting, of meditation and reflection. Times of growth and progressive change. A union of opposing forces, sun and moon, light and shadow, masculine and feminine energies, and more, all are reflected in many tales of mythology. Though eclipses may have a scientific explanation and are perceived differently from culture to culture and even person to person, there is no denying the sheer beauty and powerful majesty of some of nature's greatest wonders.